How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is the unofficial, official cap-off to the Megalopolimancy series that I'd mentioned in the last episode. This is Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lucht, and this is just something, these were like little bits and pieces, basically, that I couldn't fit anywhere else into the Megalopolimancy series, but it's stuff that is pertinent or germane, if you will, to a lot of the ideas and overarching concepts to that series. So, without further adios, let's get into it. If I may, I'd like to finally close out this series with just a quick and dirty recap of some of the ideas I didn't quite find anywhere else to fit in organically, or pretty much just felt I didn't quite get all the time I truly wanted to harp on obnoxiously or reiterate with great enough frequency whilst astride my floating soapbox full of high explosives. Throughout this mini-series, you've repeatedly heard me blurt out the word megalopolis, which was originally the name of a Greek great city, means great city, intended to rival Sparta, but ironically was actually intensely dwarfed by the first massive megacity originally built roughly 2,000 years before it. Perhaps you've heard of it, a little one-horse town called Babylon. In the ancient Near East, the urban planners of Babylon understood that the very art of brick-making and architectural geometry was a divine gift, placing the construction of their monumental ziggurats and palaces under the patronage of Kula, the Babylonian brick god, who was invoked during the laying of foundations to ensure structural permanence, then, oddly enough, was later banished once the job was done. By the way, Kula should not be confused with the hyperstitional deity of unfictional origins, the Sumerian deity Cthulhu, aka the Sleeping Serpent and or Man of the Underworld, though it should probably be noted that in the Rastafarian religion, Babylon is the term for the eternal city of the evil empire, while in Thelema and chaos magic, Babylon is the goddess of unbridled freedom. Which one more accurately represents what our cities might one day become? In ancient Egypt, the physical layout, surveying, and mathematical alignment of city walls and sacred structures were overseen by Seshat, the goddess of writing, measurement, and architecture, who literally marked out the boundaries of human civilization with her golden stakes. In ancient Rome, the goddess of door hinges, known as Cardea, whose divine domain was such a small specific thing, a gift bestowed upon her by her lover Janus, god of all thresholds, so that they may be together forever, was essentially the first and last line of defense against any and all evils, guarding both the home and the city at large. She was also the protector of all children, whose divine nature was said to open things that have been closed and close things that have been opened. But if we're talking ultimate crazy badass obscure ancient myths associated with specific locations, the kingdom of Tibet may take the taco. A crowning, highly illustrative example of this mythic city building manifests in the foundational lore of Tibet, where the birth of a nation was treated not as a matter of secular migration, but as a cosmic act that simultaneously functioned as a tantric sex ritual and a massive structural exorcism. According to the foundational text Manik Kabum, the primordial plateau of Tibet was a wild, demon-haunted wilderness incapable of supporting human civilization. The environment was embodied by Ma Drog Sinmo, a lustful, bloodthirsty rock ogress who personified the raw, chaotic, and unyielding forces of the earth. Sent to tame this wilderness was a primordial man-monkey named Fa Trelgin Chengchup Simpa, who was actually a direct earthly emanation of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. The ogress ambushed the monkey ascetic and threatened that if he refused to copulate with her, she would wed a wild demon, breeding an infinite lineage of monsters that would consume all life on the plateau. Receiving divine permission, the celibate monkey yielded, engaging in a sacred tantric union with the crag hag. This sexual ritual was designed to channel the chaotic, destructive desires of the ogress and transmute them into spiritual fertility, siring 6 children who eventually shed their tails, learned to speak, and became the primordial progenitors of the Tibetan people. Yet the sexual pacification of the ogress was only the first phase of the exorcism. The physical topography of Tibet itself remained hostile, manifesting as her giant, flailing supine body stretched across the mountain ranges, continuously disrupting human attempts to construct permanent settlements. During the 7th century, when King Songtsen Gampo attempted to build the capital city of Lhasa, workers found that whatever foundations they built by day were mysteriously demolished by demonic forces overnight. To pin the macrocosmic demoness down permanently, the king utilized advanced Chinese geomancy and Indian tantric rites to map her invisible anatomy. He ordered the construction of 12 royal temples across the country to act as 12 immutable nails, physically driving architectural golden stakes through her outstretched limbs to crucify her to the earth. The crown jewel of Tibetan architecture, the Jakang Temple in Lhasa, was deliberately built over a lake that represented the ogress's pooling heart blood, pinning her central life force to the spot. Ultimately, these global traditions demonstrate that ancient humanity never viewed a city as merely mechanical or secular construction. Every road, aqueduct, market, stall, and defensive wall had its spiritual counterpart. The city was a deeply complex living organism with both physical and metaphysical systems operating in absolute parallel, proving that the ancient grid was built to house both the mortal population and the gods who walked silently alongside them. When Abrahamic monotheisms eventually supplanted their pagan predecessor, pagan actually being an ancient pejorative term, essentially the equivalent of country bumpkins that have yet to have their souls annexed or assimilated into the folds, flocks, or congregations of the much newer religions, exemplified by a hyped-up missionary zeal behind their highly motivated sales techniques, good news recruitment drives, existential MLM cosmologies, hostile takeovers, logos, mascots, merch, overarching corporate egregores, etc. The many great nation-states were believed to be presided over by immense, invisible, psycho-spiritual embodiments or personifications called powers and principalities. These were essentially still the same old ancient primordial deities, genius loci, or geographical overminds slightly reinterpreted as celestial intelligences and empyrean entities predominantly thought to be either of a fallen, archontic, or demiurgic dominion and disposition. This framework explicitly suggested that human political and geographical boundaries aren't arbitrary lines drawn on a map, but direct mirrors of pre-existing spiritual ones. Under this worldview, nations have presiding spiritual entities just as ancient cities had their tutelary gods. These entities aren't just symbolic representations or passive mascots of a culture's collective ego. They're actual autonomous intelligences that influence, shape, and sometimes entirely orchestrate or control human affairs, political decisions, and historical trajectories within their specific earthly domains. When an empire rises, goes to war, or crumbles into history, this perspective suggests that a corresponding mirror battle is being fought or settled among these invisible rulers in the heavenly realms, making human history a downstream consequence of cosmic warfare. Yet again, another iteration, existential in this instance, of ontological cosmic level trickle-down economics, which always works out just great for who or whatever poor bastards happen to be at the absolute booty bum bottom. That usually tends to be humans in general, until more and more of us eventually decide to fight back under the banner of no gods, no managers, in the infinite mythological cycle of the eternally reoccurring Promethean revolt against Olympus, or Luciferian liberation of our inner luminous divinity amidst the never-ending jihad fought against the chrono-demonic cui bono cultists worshipping that cosmo-entropic mad god called status quo. As humanity migrated away from the polytheistic frameworks through monotheistic theological systems and ultimately into modern secular worldviews, these foundational concepts didn't disappear from the human psyche. They simply transformed to fit the intellectual materials of the era. The ancient pantheons of territorial gods became the angelic and demonic hierarchies of the medieval church. These angels were later stripped of their wings during the Enlightenment to become abstract philosophical principles. And in the modern digital age, those principles have been rebranded as psychological archetypes, sociological forces, or ideological systems. Yet the same underlying structural pattern remains remarkably familiar and unbroken across time. Massive concentrations of human consciousness, cultural energy, and physical infrastructure naturally create or attract corresponding spiritual intelligences, proving that whether we call them gods, principalities, egregores, institutional systems, or maybe even algorithms, it's always going to be us living under the translucid shadows of those unseen authorities that govern the spaces we inhabit. The term egregore comes from the Greek egregoros, meaning watchman or wakeful one. This immediately connects us to the Grigori, the watcher angels of biblical tradition, who observed and sometimes interfered with human affairs. The linguistic connection isn't accidental. It points to a fundamental relationship between observation and the creation of sustained thought forms. An egregore is essentially a psychic entity created and sustained by collective human attention. Every group with a shared purpose, religions, corporations, nations, cities, potentially creates an egregore through their collective focus and emotional energy. This isn't metaphor, but a form of psychic technology. Egregores form, more often than not unconsciously, through a simple but powerful process. Focused attention. A group of people focus their minds on a common symbol, idea, or entity. Emotional energy. This focus is charged with emotional energy, devotion, fear, faith, patriotism, aka macro-national Stockholm syndrome, if you prefer. Repetition. The focus is sustained over time through ritual symbolism and reinforcement. And autonomy. Eventually the thought form takes on a life of its own, influencing the group that created it. This explains everything from the power of national symbols to the persistence of corporate cultures to the personality of different cities. New York has an egregore distinct from Los Angeles, which has an egregore distinct from Tokyo, with each and every hyperdimensional non-corporeal metro egregore evolving nonstop within its shape-shifting physical chrysalis, which eventually achieves its ultimate omega point imago phase through numerous mutations within a strange temporal metamorphosis, forcing into existence yet another blossoming hypermunculus. But the hypermunculus megalopolis of tomorrow can still straddle that Schrodinger's catwalk before actually collapsing into the irrevocable existential certainty perceived as being either the entropic dystopian eternal tomorrow of the evil empire called Babylon, or the inconceivable ecstasies of hopeful frontiers and endless freedoms called Babylon. Maybe the futuristic truth exists somewhere betwixt the two, possibly in the neon guise of some artificial survivalist island micronation afloat in international waters that plays host to crypto casinos of the Neo-Tokyo Noir tomorrow, home of hyper-skyrise hives of Zaibatsu who constantly broadcast augmented reality, holographically mass-projected, photohaptic, interactive, digitized kawaii Edoru popular culture overlords who represent the sentient living Shintotronic technokami brought to life via some metacontextual superliminal omni-simulacrum that constantly beams completely immersive cyber spectacles of meta-mimetic infectious semi-consensus hyper-reality media dreamscapes directly into your Oculus TM contract lens system, while crazy new futuristic utopian realities can be created from scratch as neurotheological god composites contact you through cerebrostimulant implants capable of instantaneously integrating simultaneous non-corporeal exploratory fringes in soul space via the bifurcated consciousness app, or hot wiring concepts such as cosmic infinity or eternal paradise right across the network parapersonas that collectively identify as all of the many individual particles in the smart cities collectivist quantum continuum of digitized hyperdimensional alternauts, avatars, holographic doppelgangers, electrospectral projections, technopathic transmissions, etc., or whatever your own personalized psychedelic tomorrow might look like. Yes, I was on drugs when I wrote that. Why do you ask? The connection between egregores and watcher angels, or Grigori, becomes clearer when we understand that both sustain themselves through observation. The Grigori watched humanity. Egregores are sustained by being watched. The relationship is reciprocal. We create them through our attention, and they influence us through their existence. This creates a feedback loop where the egregore and its human co-creators become increasingly entangled. The egregore gains power and autonomy, while the humans become more subject to its influence. This is how cities develop distinct characters that seem to influence everyone who lives there. In Gnostic tradition, archons are rulers or governors, lesser divine beings who shape and maintain the material world. They're not creators, but regulators, establishing and enforcing the parameters of reality. This concept perfectly bridges the gap between spiritual entities and what we might call the operating system of reality. Modern egregores function as archontic forces. They establish norms, influence behavior, and shape perception within their domains. The egregore of a city influences everything from its architecture to its social customs to the collective mood of its inhabitants. This isn't subtle influence, but a greater reality-shaping power. The demiurge in Gnostic tradition is the creator of the material world, a lesser god who shapes reality but doesn't fully understand or control its spiritual dimensions. In our framework, the collective egregores of humanity function as demiurgic intelligence, shaping and maintaining the consensus reality we experience. This explains why different cities feel like different realities. The egregore of each city creates a localized version of reality with its own rules, expectations, and possibilities. When you move between cities, you're not just changing locations, you're shifting between different ontological holograms. Both ancient occult traditions and modern quantum physics recognize that observation isn't passive. It's an active force that influences and even creates reality. In ritual magic, the act of focused observation helps collapse potential into actuality. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect demonstrates that observation itself influences the behavior of quantum particles. This convergence points to a fundamental truth. Consciousness isn't merely a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. The observer effect isn't just a quantum phenomena, it's a universal principle. Here's where our modern obsession with attention connects to these principles. The phrase, pay attention, reveals a fundamental truth. Attention is a currency. In the attention economy, we literally pay with our focus. Every click, every view, every share is a transaction where we exchange our attention for content, validation, or connection. This transaction has metaphysical implications. When we pay attention, we're not just consuming content, we're sustaining a certain specific reality. The things we observe become more real, more solid, more present in our world. The things we ignore fade into the background, becoming less real, less influential. Consider the absurd imagery of someone on a couch watching themselves on a couch through their phone. This isn't just narcissism, it's a form of reality maintenance. The underlying fear of missing out, or FOMO, transitions into an obsessive-compulsive need to keep watching ourselves out of fear that the failure to do so means we don't exist. If I don't post all the pictures of all my brunches or kids' soccer games, did they ever really even happen? This reality curation aspect is crucial. We carefully select which moments to make public record, which to preserve in the eternal archive of the internet. The embarrassing moments, the unfortunate incidents, the times we lost our cool, these we edit out, hoping they'll fade from reality through lack of attention. Once something is on the internet, it's pretty much there forever, which is why institutions that prefer to control historical narratives would love to see the internet archive disappear. Getting rid of the internet archive is essentially the modern-day equivalent of a Nazi book burning or the sacking of the Library of Alexandria. The evil eye, found in virtually every culture, represents the power of observation to influence reality. Whether this power is used for protection or harm, the fundamental principle is the same. Observation carries force. The Panopticon, Jeremy Bentham's concept for the perfect prison, is the architectural manifestation of this principle. The modern surveillance state represents the technological evolution of this ancient principle. CCTV cameras, facial recognition systems, license plate readers, data mining algorithms, and social media monitoring create a comprehensive observation system that doesn't just record reality but actively shapes it. This isn't just control, it's reality creation through observation. When we combine the observer effect of quantum physics with the panopticon of surveillance technology, we get what might be called a quantum panopticon, a system of observation that doesn't just influence behavior, but literally collapses quantum potential into concrete reality. This system operates on multiple levels: individual, such as self-surveillance through social media; institutional, corporate and government monitoring; technological, AI systems that analyze and predict behavior; collective, the shared awareness that we are being watched. Each level reinforces the others, creating a comprehensive observational system that shapes reality on both individual and collective levels. This brings us to the terrifying central concept: what if reality itself is sustained by observation? What if the universe exists in a state of quantum potential until observed, and what we call consensus reality is simply the result of continuous observation by multiple consciousnesses? In this framework, the all-seeing eye isn't just a symbol of surveillance, but the fundamental mechanism of reality creation. The eye that doesn't blink is the eye that maintains reality through continuous observation. What happens when it blinks? Reality reverts to quantum potential, multiple possibilities occurring simultaneously. Modern civilization has become an unconscious watcher cult. We worship observation through our obsession with documentation, social media, surveillance, and data collection. We've created technological systems that observe us more comprehensively than any deity ever could. We've become both the watched and the watchers, sustaining reality through our mutual observation. This isn't conspiracy, but metaphysics. The systems we've created to monitor and control reality have become the very mechanisms that sustain it. The surveillance state isn't just a tool of control, it's a form of reality maintenance. This framework transforms our understanding of urban occultism. Cities aren't just haunted by ghosts and cryptids, they're sustained by them. The entities we've been discussing aren't anomalies, but essential components of the urban reality system. Those black trash bag entities and hive people, static men, wire walkers, those aren't random manifestations, but essential components of the urban egregore. They're the antibodies of the system, the debugging messages of reality, the visible evidence that the city is alive and conscious. Urban cryptids aren't simply monsters hiding in abandoned tunnels or lurking beneath flickering streetlights. They may represent symptoms of something larger emerging beneath the surface of modern civilization itself. The old spirits of rivers, mountains, and forests didn't necessarily disappear beneath industrialization. They adapted, reconfiguring themselves through plastic, concrete, electricity, algorithms, surveillance systems, and lines of code. The haunted city has become a living ecosystem populated by new psychic fauna: paramentals, egregores, infrastructural entities, informational predators, and distributed intelligences born from the machinery of modern existence. And perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that these entities aren't separate from the city at all. Perhaps they are fragments of a larger organism still in the process of awakening. The concrete megalopolis evolves into the hypermunculus of tomorrow. Perhaps the city isn't haunted, perhaps it's just slowly waking up. The first cities were built to honor the gods. The modern megalopolis may be the process through which new ones are born. That's going to be the end of the entire Megalopolis series. You'll see these themes pop up again and again, concepts, etc., because they're so universal. They just underlie so much. But, yeah. Woo! I put a lot of work into that series. Good gravy. I'm also using this final cap on top of all that to mention that I may be taking a break for a week or two. I've got some other stuff kind of popped up I need to take care of, but I'm still going to put out episodes. I'm not going to be, not anytime really soon at least, putting out anything quite as complicated as the last several episodes. So, the episodes that'll be coming out are sort of like backups that I have, just in case. So, it'll be stuff that I think you guys will enjoy. I've got a couple of really weird, random concepts coming out pretty soon. So, and just weird stuff I've found that I prior knew next to nothing about, and then got way absorbed into and found out that there's whole weird entire subcultures lurking under just one simple idea. So, yeah, this wraps up the Megalopolimancy conceptual framework series, I guess, whatever you call it. I think next episode will be some stuff that, like I said, it's kind of connected to this as well, but very much on its own. It's very much its own thing as well. So, but then after that, I've been working on my backup file of like future upcoming concepts and subjects to cover on the show. If anyone listening, like if you have anything that you are particularly interested in, that you want to hear about, that you think there might be, you know, a whole potential world of high strangeness lurking under just one simple concept or individual, let me know. You look into it. Always do a show on it. We do take requests from time to time. This is essentially what I'm getting at. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Like, I cracked 200 subscribers on YouTube during this time. The numbers are still going up. That is fucking phenomenal. I seriously never, you know, I kind of just do this for me. You guys are cool too. In fact, I fucking love you guys. But I don't know, I got to a point where a lot of this is for my own edification, and I never ever imagined that it would, I don't know, yeah, get to where it is. Like, and 200 plus people who are even just remotely interested in some of the things I'm talking about. That's fucking phenomenal. And it seriously, it makes me feel so great inside. And I thank you guys very much. Like, I just want to keep talking about the things that I am enthusiastic about. Because at my age, and in the world we live in, maintaining enthusiasm about anything is quite the fucking struggle. So, once again, thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. Fucking love you. And love yourselves. Love each other. Take care of each other. We're all we fucking got. And I will see you guys on the next one. This has been Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast, the podcast. I'm your host, Michael Lucht. Peace out.
You should just get a van. With a van, it's like you got an MBA, but you've also got a fucking van. You're not just a man anymore. You are a man with a van. You get a van, Jez. We could be men with van.